All right, so hey everyone, welcome back to the stream. Today we're going to be looking at designing another piece of our sound design arsenal, which will be the next thing we need, which is going to be our snare drum. So we have designed, if you want to go back in the streams, we've designed a kick drum already in our last session. And this time, since we have been designing and themed around drums, we're going to be doing a snare drum. So I've already designed a snare drum here for you to look at. What I'm going to do in this session is go over and explain how to create this for yourself. And you can feel free to use this in your productions, your sound design, and any other experimental music that you want to create. So let's dive right in. So we're going to dive right in, and I'm going to explain to you how this whole device or modular setup was initialized, was created, and really give you a chance to kind of build it out for yourself and figure out the components that are involved in it. So when we have a drum set, I'm just going to play the sound for you first. So we have our snare. That's our snare sound. But how did we get there? So when we think of designing a snare sound, it's very similar to a kick in that we start off with the same fundamental components. As we went in the last session, I'm not going to go over it too deeply, but we had our oscillator, our pitch envelope, our amp envelope, and our final amp going out to a mixer for the first layer. Then we had a second layer. So we had our body, we had our snap, and we had our tail, our ending transient. So in this one, we're going to have something similar. We're going to have a body, we're going to have a snap, and we're going to call it a splash. So we're going to start off with the body sound. The body sound of our snare, it'll be responsible for providing that pitch, that fundamental frequency of the snare. And again, a sine wave is the best choice for this because it gives that pure sound. If we were to use another sound for our initial hit, I'm just going to mute out the last two sounds. If we were to use another sound for this, you could hear it would bring in transients which we don't desire in our sound, especially a pulse wave. It's really a buzzy sound, and that's not realistic to a snare. A snare or any kind of hit starts off with a solid thud sound. So a smooth sine wave, which gives us just a pure tone, is probably the best option when we're building out this sound. So that's what we're going to go with here. And we've gone in our first layer, and we've added that, and that's what our initial body sounds like. Then we move on. We move on to the second layer, which is right here. This was the first layer, highlighted in blue. And this is our second layer right here, highlighted in blue again, minus the noise. So we have our second layer right here. And again, this is we used wavetable synthesis again for this because we can vary the waveform and get a different initial attack on our snare. Just like we did in the kick, we can shape that initial transient. And the initial transient inside of a snare is a little bit different. It's more pronounced than actual kick. A snare, you get that rattle. You get that snap with that rattle. So we want to imitate or replicate that real world sound of a snap with a rattle in our oscillator. So we've combined a pitch envelope with a wavetable synthesizer and an amp envelope to shape going out to our amp. So that goes out to our mixer because we're mixing and combining three sounds together, That's just another layer in our sound. And with those two sounds, we have something that sounds like this. Or so that layer is our snap. That's the layer by itself. You can hear a snap sound. Again, you're going to be shaping these sounds over time. So as you get better with shaping those sounds, you'll get a more realistic sound. You're not going to get the exact same sound that I make, and I'm not going to get the exact same sound that you make using your oscillators. But you can approximate the sound. It's never going to be exactly the same because we're dealing with electronics and electronic signals, which are slightly varying each time you wire it up. So that's the interesting thing about modular synthesis. Yes, you can create predictable sounds as long as you tune it in, but you're going to get a slightly different sound. You might get a slightly different sound from me when you're tuning it in, but you can dial in the same sounds as what I'm creating. So again, we use the wavetable synthesizer. Again, a wavetable synthesizer allows us to have different waveforms. You can see in this little box here, we're changing the waveform that we're using, or the wave type. So right now we have a sine wave, and it is working for us very well. So we need that to create that short transient punch, and we need to be subtle. And this is a noise layer that's going to be doing more work than, let's say, in a kick, where we have initial transient with a thump. We're going to have a more of a pronounced snap and then a rattle at the end of our body sound. So it'll be snap, body, rattle to create a snare. So I'm just explaining the fundamentals of creating this sound, and you can take those fundamentals and apply it to anything you're designing, whether that be in your DAW, whether that be in Reaktor, whether that be in, let's say, Ableton or Fruity Loops, or even in Logic, or in Reaktor. Any platform that you want to use, you can do this in. And then finally, we have our last layer, which is our kind of a noise layer, kind of to add that splash sound. So we had snap, we had body, we had rattle. So we want that rattle off at the end, because when you hear a snare has something like on the bottom of it. It's like a bead. So we want to replicate that bead. We hit the initial snap sound, we hit the body of the snare, and then it rattles off into the distance, or let's say reverberates. That would be a release sound. So we want to replicate that release or that rattle, or we can call it splash. The main difference from the kick is that although we're using a noise generator here, we are using another type of noise generator from the primary collection. The main difference is that we're still using a noise generator, but we're making it more full, and we've added an envelope to create the shape that we want to create. So as you can see, I've added an envelope here to kind of mold that shape. And with that in, we hear a splash sound. So it'll be more like a rattle sound. So it's very, very subtle. It's very, very subtle in the background. So that sound is really subtle in the background for us. Get a rattle. And with it all together, we get our full snare sound. So you have to also be careful which octave you play this in, because it needs to be played in a higher octave, because we don't want a kick sound, so we need to play it higher up on the keyboard. And what this does, this multi-breakpoint, is literally creating a little bit of a, let's say, it's creating a shape to the way that our sound is being modulated. And you can feel free to, for any module that you want to check, you can hover over it. As long as your info tab is selected at the top right here, then you can see what each thing does. So that's pretty much our lesson for today, or our session. We can hook it up. We can take it a step further. We can hook it up to some distortion to really emphasize those hits. I'm just going to hook it up to some distortion here, or even a clock and a sequencer, so we can get multiple hits. So let's quickly put that together. So I'm going to grab the pitch, put that there. Then we're going to route everything through. Looks like a jumbled tangle of wires, but as you understand this a little bit further, you'll be able to connect your connections just like this. So right now we're bringing over our gate connections, which is essentially our on-off signals. And then I'm going to start bringing over our pitch connection. From each layer. So right now you can hear we're getting something coming through. Just going to hook it up to the internal clock. We can play through. So we can see one or two layers may not be connected. Yep. So the body. So right now it's tuning to the actual sequencer. So there we have it. We have our snare. So you're going to have to go, make sure as you go, you fine tune your sounds. Just going to dial it in a little bit. Make sure all layers are working. Yes, they are. Let's check that our last layer is working correctly. Yep, that looks good. Yeah, and there you go. So that's our full sound. We can just dial in a few snares right here, just to demonstrate. The rhythm. There we go. Shorten the actual length of the note, make it more realistic to a snare. And there we have it, our finished snare sound. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow for more sound design and Reaktor sessions. And let me know what you want to see next in another live stream. And that's all for now. And I'll see you in the next session.